title of my paper is Rape of Europe, and with this very strange title I start the Asian section of Congress. Back in 2008, as part of a big Indo-Pakistani and Central Asian project, Soros Center for Contemporary Art Almaty held a conference titled Eastern Orientalism in Almaty, Kazakhstan. It goes without saying that the conference coincides with the 30th publication anniversary of Edward Said's book, Orientalism. In the end of this book, the author warns his readers about the dangers of Orientalization of the East. Overwhelmingly politically correct participants of the conference from Europe insisted on blurring the East-West axis. They claimed that due to globalization, exoticism, which used to be the foundation of the classic Orientalism, disappears, and therefore the Earth became flat. On the contrary, Indian and Pakistani researchers were speaking about the incarnation of Said's fairs at the level of the tourism industry and at the level of preservation of cultural uniqueness. As usual, reports of the participants from Central Asia were deeply enrooted in local context, evidencing deep and aching tradition of isolation. The tradition of isolation is preconditioned not only by remote geographical location, but also by historically customary aloofness of the region, ingrained in the minds of citizens of stretched geopolitical formation under the title Soviet East.
No? Can hear a bit louder.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, really speak to the microphone. Okay.
But I lost that text.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm not the exclusion. That is why I would like to demonstrate the process of the emergence of the Eastern Orientalism using art of Kazakhstan as an example. I would like to make an attempt to analyze the tactics in globalized world, in ideal denying existence of center and periphery as such. In 20th century, cultural complex of Kazakhstan, which is historically based on tradition of nomadic lifestyle and peripheral influence of Islam, was subjected to total Sovietization. Already in 1930s, the country started importing European type of culture filtered through the Soviet censorship. Principles of socialist realism played a defining role in development of professional art in Kazakhstan. First artists who graduated from Moscow and Leningrad art universities started to return back to the Republic in 1950s. They described socialist content using academic language and pretended exoticism of faces and costumes as a national form. Here. Oh no. No, the first one. Yeah, here. And the next. Methodology of borrowing of cultural form deprived of practice and context was introduced consciously due to the fact that art had predominated and strictly practical objectives. It was aimed at demonstrating a new human in a new society, acknowledging neither class nor ethnical division. Nevertheless, the next generation of local artists generated primordial concepts relying on decorative and applied art of nomads and medieval petroglyphics. Here. Aha. 1960s and 1970s passed in a search of national painting language, like this, and 1980s in a search of roots, that is historical search. As you may notice, artists express these ideas by means of modern painting. However, possibly one should not consider it a simple imitation, but an attempt to participate in European culture. Along this, with reference to one's own cultural heritage, it was considered as an act of disloyalty. Thus, it can be acknowledged that the issue of authenticity and identity was raised in the art of Kazakhstan for the first time in 1960s, 1970s. At the same time, influence of Matisse and Picasso is doubtless. A synergy laying the foundation for the transformation of primitive Soviet Orientalism has emerged at this particular counterpoint. The warning of Edward Said to avoid Orientalization of the East was in 1970s looks like curious coincidence. The different in direction of two vectors of Orientalism theory coinciding in time may be explained by estrangement of Said and his followers from USSR, including Soviet East, enhancing their isolate fixation. Recent book by Alexander Etkind, Internal Colonization, indirectly unveils the reason of extreme lack of knowledge about the region, but does not remedy the situation. The position of an invisible country at least explains paranoid yearning for recognition, primarily in Europe. To achieve this, a government of Kazakhstan spends millions annually. These funds are primarily spent on presentation of the country in the discourse of Eastern Orientalism, that is, ethos, which is comprised of a banal mix of ancient tradition and new technologies. The fact that at the time of collapse of the Soviet Union, Kazakhstan was the last country which declared its independence is equally ironical. Peculiarly, all the Republic of the Soviet East were quite hesitant, probably because their existence and border were determined and created by the Soviet government. Nevertheless, euphoria caused by the bestowed independence, opening the borders, abolishment of censorship, freedom of the market, access to new technologies and information, and even announced democracy, enormously vitalized not only political and economic life, but cultural life as well. One of the important objectives of the new state was to prove its historicity, and it brought to life the epidemic of monumental construction. Equestrian monuments were erected in every city of Kazakhstan, replacing memorials to Lenin. As a result, as we may see, aesthetic of dependence, changing ideology by road still use methodology of social realism. As post-colonial, post-Soviet nationalism grows, artists try to eliminate dissonance between the European form and the new content. The idea of search for differences instead of similarities is proclaimed. For example, the quest is undertaken through the use of new technology, e.g. video reconstruction of an ancient custom. The idea of this work was born out of travel essay by John Castle, who in 17th century observed a date of bridal pair allowed only through the laced carcasses of Utah. In my view, this work is an apotheosis of Eastern Orientalism, where local artists not only imitate impressions of the English witness and degraded film, but underlines uncivility of the tradition together with legendary Eastern sexuality. Another mythological movement uses exoticism of the region, unoccupied and uncultivated landscape, Asian faces, and mysterious shamanistic practices. A critical movement in contemporary art of Kazakhstan is characterized by the strongest and most direct appeal to the art of Europe. Artists are not trying to hide dissonance between the form and the content. On the contrary, they are playing with it making transgressive transition between visualities and substances. Thus, Son of East, a boy crucified on a cycle, in reality depicts a major building unit of Yurta, Shanirak, which at the same time is the foundation of the national emblem of Kazakhstan. And back here. A match with Vitruvian man or crucifixion is an ironical knock by Said Atabekov, a mockery of his own Orientalistic view of his country. The artist similarly explores neo-colonial trends, overtures of Kazakhstan with the US and the Arab Emirates, and their support of dictatorship based on interest in oil reserves of the country. Of course, this mixing technique have not been discovered by artists from Kazakhstan. It is a global, rapidly developing process, partially related to the development of the motivator genre of social networking websites. In many cases, it appears to be international language of mass culture and tourism industry, which is spoken by the most of humanity today. Sometimes localization of this utterance creates new meaning even in our time of anonymous copying and anonymization of cultural production. Thus, classical portico of opera and ballet theater erected in Astana, new capital of Kazakhstan, full of simulacra of famous buildings from all over the world, can be considered not only a symbol of European culture transferred to the bare steppes, but a symbol of the nation and nationalhood, its indispensable attribute. Conformation to the European nation through archaic European form is a well-tried technique, paradoxically confirming independence and civility of the country. Local flavor is present in quadriga, carving the fronton. The patron of muses in Astana is the Saka Empress Tomiris, who, according to the legend, cut off the head of Persian King Cyrus and drowned it in the sack of blood. In comparison with opera and ballet theater in Almaty, constructed during Soviet times, where ram horns-shaped decorative fixtures at the column cap bring local flavor to the building. Astana prefer personification of the local color. Eventually, it's not a unique case. There are plenty of similar examples. It proves that Eastern Orientalism had become a full-fledged player of globalization process. In spring this year, local artist Konish Bazargaliyev has opened an exhibition entitled Well, All People Were Kazakh. He complemented it with a story about the union of all people on the territory of Kazakhstan as a result of global catastrophe. His piece of art, preserving the world history of art, became a main treasure for the people who survived. On one hand, this appropriation looks like an ironic parody on efforts of the government. On the other hand, the artist solved his internal personality dilemma, his own disruption between ethnicity and professionalism. It also solves a problem of the government endowing a country with its own bold history of art told in the language of mass culture. One more time about localization. Project of Konish Bazargaliyev is a big privilege of Eastern Orientalism because for European artists, even residing in Kazakhstan, similar series would become a violation of all possible norms of political correctness. As such, this privilege is similar to the means of protest against Danish cartoons or an opportunity for Kishore Mahbubani to name his essay, Can Asian Things? An ambassador of my country to the United Kingdom threatening UK government to ban the film by Sacha Baron Cohen, Cultural Learning of America for make benefit glorious nation of Kazakhstan. A journalist named Borat has become the most famous Kazakh in the world, particularly because he was able to speak freely. In any case, that is named that bodyguard from all the countries scream when they see my passport. Thank you.